All right, so in today's video, we're going back into investigation Wade mode because there has been a little bit of a controversy in the influencer boxing scene as of today. I went to bed last night after getting a nice workout in. Go check out the fitness journey on Wade's World. A ton of completely different, but also super cool stuff we're doing over at that channel. But I go to sleep and wake up to all-out chaos regarding Misfits Boxing and the Professional Boxing Association, their longtime partner, I would say, as a commission for all of their UK events, and now the partnership's off. This thing is completely done for. Misfits is going its own way, which I think we all kind of knew was going to be the case, but it's all happening right in front of my eyes, so it's time for the breakdown. Let's go. All right, so like I said, I woke up and saw this. We actually covered it a little bit on the Breakdown podcast, so you guys can go check that video out, but I wanted to get more in-depth here. So I'm looking at this tweet from Happy Punch, and it says, the PBA is holding a hearing for Ed Matthews following serious steroid use allegations. He's scheduled to headline Misfits 12 in 8 days. Now, again, that's just the headline, so here's the actual text in the tweet. From the PBA, a disciplinary hearing for Mr. Ed Matthews has been scheduled for January 18th, 2024 at 4 p.m. During this hearing, consideration will be given to assess whether he is a fit and proper person to hold a PBA boxer license in light of recent serious allegations made against him. Just before we go any further, this is kind of insane. Let me get this straight. The PBA is holding a disciplinary hearing for allegations of steroid usage, and I'm assuming they've gotten these allegations somehow. This is not a positive test or a previous positive test that Ed has had through any of his fights, at least not that I'm aware of. If that's the case, then fair play. Discipline the shit out of the guy. If he's tested positive on anybody's platform, cool. But they're holding a disciplinary committee hearing for allegations of steroid use? Like, they're gonna try to either get this guy to admit that he's using them without testing him, or, you know, you are the commission, you could just test. I hope people understand how nonsensical that statement is. I've tried to tell you guys for a while that the PBA is a bit of a clown show. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's what it is. They don't do things that a organization like the BBBFC does. They try to emulate them to a degree, but even the finer details of what it is that they do are always marred in controversy or gray area, and something like this, where even just the first tweet, before we get into the back and forth that they had with Mams Taylor, they're holding a disciplinary hearing for a guy they haven't tested. And listen, I'm the first guy talking about fighter safety. If Ed is on steroids, f*** out of here. It's over with, right? But we're 8 days away, and you want to hold the hearing for 2 days before the event. You could just do that now. You could just, I mean, I don't know what this hearing's about, but you could just test the guy, see if he's on the juice right now. If he's not, cool, no big deal. If you have some issues with what he's doing out of camp, or you think he's on some things while he's not and cycling off them beforehand, then you could ask Misfits and work together to create a testing protocol for outside of camp training. It's really not very hard to do, but this right away reads like a company that jumped the gun on allegations that they don't have proof for, and instead of testing the individual, and again, they could have had prior tests from Ed that said, oh, Ed is on some stuff, or there's some elevated levels here, we might want to take a look at that. But if they don't have that and they're going off allegations that Ed is potentially using instead of testing him, that is a terrible look, because you are the testing body. Just test him. So all of this just reads weird to me. Like, we're gonna have it 2 days before the event, even though you could just do that now. We have a disciplinary hearing for a guy that has allegations of usage because of Ed's apparent usage of PEDs before he ever started boxing, which I think he's admitted to on a TikTok or something from years and years back. But instead of going through this word vomit of Professional Boxing Association license and serious allegation, you could just test the guy. It's really that simple. They're making this more than it needs to be, and I think it's because, again, something I've told you guys about the PBA previously is they like to interject themselves in ways that most commissions will not. It's a little bit of an attention grab. And then someone asked Mams after this if they were going to be fighting, because Ed has now gotten this rumor of steroid usage. What's going on? Because again, when a commission just comes out and says something, leaves a ton of gray area as to what the fuck a disciplinary hearing is, why they're doing it if there's just allegations of use and they haven't tested him, and why they're doing it 2 days before the fight. Obviously, fans are going to have questions. So someone asked Mams, so is it still on? I heard rumors that Ed fighting might be in jeopardy. Mams said, not in jeopardy, not one bit. Okay, simple enough, right? Not a huge deal. But then about an hour later, apparently, Mams said, it. I've had enough of these people at the PBA, because he puts out a statement and says, Misfits Boxing are excited to partner with a new governing body. Things are going to be great. Fairness, transparency, and testing are all going to be a big part of this moving forward. New judging system will be in place starting Misfits 13-14. So that is officially the end of the Misfits PBA era, an hour after this whole back and forth happened. And this tells me that this has been brewing for a while. This isn't just over Ed Matthews and some steroid allegations. There seems to be some deep-seated and deep-rooted disagreements between Misfits and the PBA. And I don't know if that's the three things that Ma'am said there: fairness, transparency, testing, maybe a judging system that they want to implement that PBA is not going to do, because Ma'am is looking to, in his words, revolutionize boxing scoring. So maybe they didn't want to be on board with that. And I do need to say this before we even move on. The PBA is not needed for influencer boxing. It is helpful. It is the right move to have a governing body partner with the promotion, because it does bring you things like testing for PEDs, which we absolutely should have. An organization that's going to help with the corralling of fighters and making sure that everyone is on the correct weight, using the correct protocols to make sure certain weight classes are abided by, and also providing judges and referees and cutmen and all of these things to be able to provide safety and fairness, hopefully, in a boxing match. You do want those things. You can hire them independently, but a governing body that's already set up makes it a lot easier. But the PBA are not the only governing body for white-collar boxing in the UK. This is something that you guys should know by now. The ISKA is who sanctioned Kingpin and worked with Austin McBroom and Social Gloves. They've done stuff with influencer boxing before. And sure, they've had their own issues, the Gibbs scorecard, and those things happen in combat sports, but you don't have this level of pettiness coming out of them as an organization to go back and forth with the promoter that they're trying to partner with or previously were. But now that this divorce is happening, apparently all the dirty laundry is being aired, because now the PBA responds to Mams, I guess, feeling attacked by that, I guess. And they say, Misfits Boxing, due to the clear violations of PBA's rules and regulations, bringing boxing into disrepute, and in the interest of boxer safety, Misfits Boxing promoter's license have now been suspended, and here we go with this shit. Disciplinary hearings will follow for such license holders. What the are these disciplinary hearings? Who gives a shit about them? It's like in America, it's like the NCAA, right? The National Collegiate Athletic Association, putting down hearings and sanctions on people, even though they're not regulated by any sort of actual government entity. They only hold the power within their small little circle. They create a role for themselves and then wield some sort of discipline as if it is in any way official or merited. And again, if this was a legitimate boxing association, if it was the BBBFC, if it was the Nevada State Athletic Commission, if it was the California, if it was any actual governed boxing association, then I would say, okay, let's see what the rules and regulations issues are. Let's see, again, what issues the promoter is having with the commission. What's the big deal in between? Is the promoter trying to hide something? Is the commission concerned about XYZ? In this case, though, it just feels like a commission and a promoter going back and forth over who's going to have more power or what power play is going to ultimately overarch the other. And the PBA having no leg to stand on in that argument. Misfits doesn't need them for any of this stuff. And so to act like their disciplinary hearings or their license and promoter regulation bullshit means anything, it doesn't. It doesn't mean a thing. And doing this just burns a bridge with one company that would work with them and hopefully elevate them in the eyes of the BBBFC so that one day they could be taken seriously by people in pro boxing as well as white collar boxing. But doing stuff like this with, again, a lot of gray area and no factual anything behind it, like it'd be one thing if the PBA dropped a fact on us, like, yo, Ed tested positive and Misfits is still trying to let him fight. Okay, that's a fact. We roll with you. That shit can't happen. I don't know what this gray area is they're talking about. They're violating rules and regulations, and they're going to need suspensions and disciplinary hearings. It's all gray area bullshit. It doesn't show us anything. If you're going to come out and make a statement, you better have something with it for us to say, okay, this makes sense as to why they're making statements, other than we don't want to look bad because Misfits isn't working with us. So Mams then tweeted as this thing was going down, he took to the subtweet, which Mams is known to do, fair play. And so Mams said this on Twitter: once upon a time, I dated this girl who kept doing messed up things. I dumped her, then started dating someone else. Weeks later, she tweets, "It's over, Mams, I can't take it anymore." So obviously referring to the PBA. The part that's interesting about this tweet isn't the nursery rhyme freaking fairy tale story that Mams is telling. It's the fact that he says weeks later, as in this has already been something that Misfits has moved on from. They're not working with the PBA, and they haven't been for weeks. This, again, like I thought, was not an isolated incident with Ed Matthews. And again, if they haven't been working with the PBA for weeks, that makes the PBA's tweet even more weird. Like, they were essentially going to be sanctioning the fight anyway. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. If they weren't working with Misfits, yet we're running diatribes on Twitter like Ed Matthews has got serious allegations of steroid usage and is going to now face disciplinary hearings. If they weren't actually sanctioning the event, that's even more diluted for a company to do. Because one, you're not regulating the event. You have nothing to do with the event, yet you're tweeting about the event. So if what Mams is saying is true here, and the PBA was just acting as if they were a part of things that they weren't, just to, again, from what it looks like, put out a narrative that Ed was using steroids. If that's true or not, who knows? But they had nothing to do with it and would not have been able to test him regardless. That is a scumbag move from a company that, again, seems like they want to take pot shots more than actually do their job. I know that everybody expects me to come over here and shit on Misfits, which, by the way, I've never really done. I've never, like, come out and been like, Misfits. That's not what I do. I think that they do a good job over there. In this case specifically, if this is the timeline of events and Misfits hasn't been working with the PBA and isn't planning to for this event going forward, and the PBA is still out here tweeting like a side check, that's not Misfits' fault. That's some unprofessional, low-hanging fruit from a commission that has nothing to do with who Misfits works with unless they're under contract with them for said events. Again, it just feels like an attention play. And let's not forget that the PBA, I'm pretty sure the same commission that pushes those ICB belts as their belts to be used on promotions for white-collar events and is adamant about like people using them as if anybody takes that shit serious. And I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that's a part of this too. That Misfits decided to use their belts, and the freaking PBA wanted them to use the ICB belts, and maybe that was another fork in the road, which again is probably one of many things I assume has gotten us to this point. But here's a very interesting part of this, and this is what we covered on the breakdown that I wanted to really get into more depth with. This person named Viejo here on Twitter says, so you're gonna let Ed fight when he's probably on steroids? And Mams comes back and says this: no, it was solely the PBA who made the decision not to test Ed for his last fight. That was not in our hands. This was under their supervision only, and that's the irony. Ed will be tested for this fight 100%. This is the thing that I have hinted at for a very long time, but again, because I am not someone to air out people's business, I didn't want to necessarily bring up, because once you rip the Band-Aid off, listen, that motherfucker's got to come off. I heard for months and months and months from multiple fighters that they weren't tested by the PBA. Face Sensei and I talked about it on our show about his experience with the PBA. Apparently what they had been doing was randomly testing specific fighters from their card. Sometimes the main event guy, sometimes maybe not. And that's not the kind of random drug testing that you should be proud of, right? The random drug testing is something that you would do outside of camp and popping up on someone and testing them while they're not expecting to be tested. What apparently was happening with the PBA, again, from Mams Taylor, some of the guys were not tested at all. That means, sure, your medicals get done, but we're talking not even the baseline urine test for some of these people. So they almost make it impossible on themselves to catch anyone if they're actually using. And the irony of this thing is how we've come full circle in this video is because what Mams Taylor just said, the irony of the whole Ed Matthews situation, this all coming to light today. The PBA starts out with, we're going to need to sit down with Ed Matthews at a disciplinary hearing 2 days before his event to judge whether he is fit for a PBA boxing license. Knowing, apparently, again, according to Mams, that they're not even involved with the event. That Ed is being put under this disciplinary hearing because he's suspected or there is allegations of steroid usage. All the while, the last time Ed was on their card in the UK, the Prime card, they didn't even test it. So you didn't have any suspicions then. The last part of last year. But a month later, you're suspicious to the point where you need to sit down with Ed in the disciplinary committee. You let him walk out there and knock Swarms the fuck out in 30 seconds, and now you're suspicious. That, my friends, is what we call a contradiction. That is a bad look, man, for multiple reasons. One, how are you going to take yourself seriously as a boxing commission when you are the ones making these decisions on apparently not just how testing goes, but even who is tested? For then you to use the fact that you didn't test someone months ago to come back and paint a picture to the public that you're testing Ed, or you're going to have Ed in some disciplinary committee in the hopes of preserving fighter safety and integrity in your commission. That's what we call bullshit, bro. And on top of that, you're airing out dirty laundry on social media. This could have easily been handled behind the scenes. If you had a problem with whatever it was, if it was Ed and you guys had some sort of actual reasoning for calling him into a disciplinary hearing, not just allegations. If they're allegations, it's a simple process. You test him. Allegations, test, result. That's it. Not allegations, disciplinary hearing, we need to determine and then fight, test, result, backtrack. That's not how this works. And again, I don't think that was the only thing. If you had an issue with your ICB belts not being used on the promotion, if you had an issue with MAMS wanting to restructure scoring systems for boxing based on a little bit of what he considers the inequity of boxing, judging, scoring, or it's a conflict of interest because he is the promoter. And the biggest controversy that people have been talking about in the last few months is another promoter in KSI who's the CEO of the company that he's fighting on in the main event. That's fine, but you deal with it behind the scenes. And if you can't come to an agreement and Misfits decides to go elsewhere, that isn't the token that you use to start firing off shots and flare guns talking about rules violations, disciplinary hearings, and serious steroid allegations when you don't have any concrete evidence for these things, or at least none that you've brought to the public. So again, what was the point for the tweet? What was the point of talking about it publicly if there is no proof for the things that you're saying? If there's no reason for these things, it doesn't scream professionality, it screams attention and airing dirty laundry that, again, is done for no reason and will build you no relationships in this scene. You guys know that I won't hold my tongue when it comes to criticism of anything, Misfits included. I've been one of the loudest people criticizing Misfits where I think they either overstep or go wrong and try to, in my own way, correct course for the scene. But this one's not on them, at least not to me. And I don't know what the reasoning is outside of the judging system that Mams Taylor wants to leave the PBA, but it seems like the more times we get these subtweets and these social media outbursts from the commission, that it's only going to get worse. So I think it's probably best done this way. But Mams had one more tweet, and he said, for anybody who had doubt, this has been in the works long before today. And this is a tweet from December 20th, must have January 20th, sanctioned by, and I'm assuming that's another governing body they're going to use that he's marked out there. New rules, fine by March, we start ASAP. And again, like I said, I just think it's really simple what the right course of action was here. It wasn't what the PBA did, and now that you find out more information about why it is that they potentially did come out and start accusing Ed Matthews of this and accusing Misfits Boxing of that, this seems like, unfortunately, a scorned lover. I'm going to be honest. That's what it seems like here. You don't see this kind of thing from any other organization. You don't see it from, like I said, in the Nevada State Athletic Commission. You don't see it from the BBBFC going off on a tangent about things that are not proven and that they don't have anything to back up, at least publicly, the things that they're saying. So all in all, I think this was a little bit of an exposure of the PBA that I think a lot of people have not gotten the insight into how it is that they operate. This is them putting their own foot in their mouth. Because while subjectively, yes, the PBA has issues with their refereeing system or their scoring system, that's all opinionated. That's my opinion versus yours. That stuff isn't the biggest deal. The biggest deal of this is their constant need for attention, their constant need for people to look at them as something serious when they operate behind the scenes and now in the full view of the public like they are not. I think Misfits won't have an issue getting sanctioned by any other of these amateur or white-collar governing bodies like the ISKA, or I'm sure many others, but because again, you don't really need to be sanctioned in influencer boxing, but for safety protocol, for drug testing purposes, for providing judges and officials and cutmen, EMT, hospital, all that stuff, it is more organized and it is a better look to the public that you're partnering with someone instead of hand-picking judges, because that can become a conflict of interest. So we'll see if Misfits goes off and picks their own judges and they're Misfits judges provided by Mams Taylor, then I'll be the first to call that out. But I don't think that's the case here. I think it was just, again, business that wasn't working out, that could have been left unsaid in public, that unfortunately turned into dirty laundry. That's all I got, man. What do you guys think? Is Misfits in the wrong here? Is PBA in the wrong here? Is this going to help or hurt either of their brands? And at the end of the day, was this the right move for both to separate? I don't have those answers, but January 20th, Misfits 12 will be live here on the channel. I know I haven't covered it much, but we'll start ramping that up soon, and guess we'll find out.